Welcome to the Cashflow Academy podcast. I'm your host, Andy Tanner. This is where we make investing simple, and this is an exciting topic. This will be one of our highest rated shows for sure. The reason being is the topic is going to be AI and how it's going to change investing, change trading, change finance. It is a hugely important topic, and we've got the perfect expert on deck to help us with this. Before we hop into the show, we congratulate you for investing some time to tune in and increase your financial education. And you can further that effort at yourinvestingclass.com. You can drop by there for free goodies, check out what it means to be a more educated investor and some of the benefits you can gain from that. And so we invite you to go to yourinvestingclass.com. I'm so excited we have Alejandro Lopez-Lira with us. And Alejandro, first of all, thank you for joining us.
No, thank you. I'm very happy to be here and have a wonderful conversation about AI and finance.
So he's at a conference in Barcelona, and he was nice enough to join us from Europe. And generally, he resides in Florida, and he is an associate professor. And his specialty is machine learning, pricing, and all things, kind of that world of melding that data mining of research for price, to price things. And he's on the cutting edge AI. Attended the Wharton School of Business, which for me, that's about it. I don't think they'd let me within 10 miles of that place for fear of making everyone dumber. So this
You're
is
always
way
welcome to come.
well, when I speak to PhDs, and it's always above my pay grade, so I'm just grateful for the chance to learn, because this is the closest I'll get to being admitted into those schools for sure. But we're going to have a great topic on AI. Just off the top, you've got a book that's available now, pre-order on Amazon, called The Predictive Edge. Outsmart the market using generative AI and ChatGPT in financial forecasting. That's available for pre-order right now, and it will be released in July. July, did you say 11th? July 11th?
July 11th, correct.
July 11th, it'll be out. And I'm number one in line for that, because here's what I know. Technology changes the world. There's tremendous obsolescence risk in technology. One of the things I kind of laugh at crypto, and I tell people, all the coins you see right now, I don't know, but it very could be that we're talking about those coins the way we talk about Netscape, the way we talk about Quattro Pro and WordPerfect word processing. They just change so much, and the exponential nature of this change, that's a big challenge to keep up with that. So AI, I imagine, will be no different. It will, the internet changed. We spoke before we started the show that the internet changed how we did things. And in the 90s, I had this feeling like everyone else had, well, this is going to be big, but we don't know what the FANG trade was. We didn't know who the leaders were going to be and who would fall away. And the next billion-dollar company is probably some guy in his garage with his son working on some AI that just blows up, and they're a billion-dollar company. So with that, let's have you introduce yourself, though, a little bit deeper than just what I mentioned. How did you get interested in AI and financial forecasting?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me here again, and for the wonderful introduction. So I got interested in AI because I wanted to understand how markets work better. So my research used to be like, if you invest in one asset, you get a certain return, but if you invest in Apple instead of Microsoft, you will get a different return profile. And I just wanted to understand why that was the case. That was during my PhD. Turns out that at least what they taught us during the PhD, now I know a little bit better, was that compensation for risk should be what's driving the higher return. So like the only way that you should be able to get a higher return is if you get a higher amount of risk, right? But it's kind of like tricky to understand all the risks in the economy. So what I did was I started my research trying to apply AI back in the days before ChatGPT, to try to understand from firms' points of view in their annual reports, what were the risks they were discussing. So like in the annual report, there's a small section called risk factors where firms will describe every single thing they're scared of or that could possibly happen. And one of my things in my PhD thesis was just collecting all of those risks using some machine learning techniques and trying to see if they would map nicely to some differences in returns investment. So that's how I got started. And obviously, when ChatGPT came out, I was so surprised. I was just like completely astonished about the jump in capabilities of the model, and immediately decided I had to do some research on that.
Well, this is interesting stuff. You talk about listing risks, and there's a million you could list. There's obsolescence risk that we just mentioned. There's geographical risk. There's political risk. There's interest rate risk. There's, any number of risks. The risk that I'm most afraid of is the one I haven't thought of yet. That's the one that comes in from the side and gets you. And, this is an interesting idea. I think it'd be great to frame our conversation around, let's define trading as an effort to buy low and sell high, and let's define investing as trying to own a business. And if the business profits, you can share in that via dividend, maybe trade some covered calls on it for some extra income. That's my favorite thing to do, to where I say, look, if the business is strong and it makes money, then I should make money. The trader's a little different, and we do both at the Cashflow Academy. We have guys that teach trading for those that want to do it, where we buy low and sell high. AI is, I think, really going to help with both of those type of ventures in analyzing things fundamentally, analyzing things technically, and probably quantitative analysis, where we'll get into quantitative economics of the big picture, quantitative economics, really for even macro and micro. So I can't see a part of investing this doesn't touch. But is your research centered more on investing or trading, or has it been both?
It's a little bit of both. So my previous research used to be a little bit more about investing, like where you have a slightly higher holding horizon. And with ChatGPT, there's something very interesting for the purpose of investing. So the big problem with ChatGPT is that it has memorized almost the whole internet up until very,
Yes.
very recently. So it's very hard to do serious back testing of strategies. So you only have like very short horizons going forward. That implies that if you want to be certain or a little bit more sure statistically about whether a strategy works or not, you have to do higher frequency trading. So instead of trading every month or every year, you would need to trade every day to see if the strategy works. That's obviously very costly, but for research purposes, it's kind of like the only serious way so far of trying to understand if these large language models can help us in investing tasks.
And I think finance is an area that's led with technology. I mean, before ChatGPT, you read a book like Flash Boys, where they're trying to get a straight line of their fiber optic network to shave off, milliseconds off the trade. And the high frequency trading is very much dominated. Most of the trading is, most people probably don't know, it's automated anyway. Most of the transactions are computerized, and this has already been done. Even a search for a company, we've had search capabilities with so many parameters we can put in and say, go fetch and find something that fits what I want. So how does this change, something I see is already highly automated? I mean, as a person who is always interested in technology, even at the end of the day, no matter what, it goes up, down, or sideways. And what causes that, it could be anything. And some people feel that they're competing against these supercomputers. I don't feel that way. It goes up, down, or sideways, and if I have good risk management and I use my options properly, what do I care? But yet there's this part of me that knows, Andy, if you don't study this, it's going to be to your detriment. You're going to have to learn this. So where's the current state of what's actually in use today using AI to your knowledge? Where we stand like right now?
Yeah, so you're perfectly correct. So something funny that happens is the minute we publish a study as a working paper back in April 2023, if I remember correctly, some hedge funds just like wrote to us and like there were two kinds of hedge funds. Ones were like, hey, we're very interested in applying this technology. How can we work together? The other ones were like, oh, we already have a system working on this since a couple of years ago. So I think in the market there's a mix of both things. So like there's very, very, very sophisticated investors using the latest technologies, and the minute something comes out, the minute they will test it. And then for the other part of the investors, that's usually more on the fundamental side, it takes a little bit longer to spreading there. So I feel that there are definitely players that are using the full range of technologies available. And the very nice thing about like ChatGPT and related technologies is that before, if you wanted to have the best model in the market, like you really need to invest a ton of money in infrastructure. Like you needed hypercomputers and hire data analysts and everything. Now, at least as these models get increasingly better, the very funny thing is that they're available for everyone for a very for a very small fee. So it seems that these computational capabilities are just spreading around more.
Now let's further dive into that access idea. We just lost Jim Simons. Uh, you know, better returns than Warren Buffett ever dreamed of. Before fees, he's about 60% a year average throughout his 20-year career, whatever it was. And I was looking at his website, and it's interesting what they brag about. They brag about the number of terabytes they burn through every day in collecting data and analyzing data. That's their big boast, and they're very secretive. They have an absolute army of mathematicians, engineers, and most importantly, computer scientists that run these models. And so when you said that this could be accessed by the small guy, the guy like you and I, that was really intriguing to me. Is it really a level playing field when those guys have those massive supercomputing, or does the technology now bring that to where we can have access to that same type of power as individuals?
So I think there's several different areas. So one is the speed, and you're never gonna outspeed the fast guys. That's a game that you don't want to play unless you're literally in that industry. So putting that aside, there's both the data. So it is costly to obtain data, but you can do it. Like that part is doable if you put enough effort and if you associate with firms or etc. What's definitely now in the playing field is the text analysis capabilities of these large language models. So before, I was mentioning my PhD thesis, I used to have to code everything manually and run things and have servers and everything. It was a mess. But now nothing we had before is even close to the capabilities of these large language models. So whatever text analysis tools, whatever trying to read financial statements or trying to read news, or whatever other information that's available in text is just processed so much better by these new technologies. And the fun thing is that these new technologies are available to everyone. So obviously, Renaissance technology would love to have a really, really, really large ChatGPT that would be better than the one we have. But as far as we know, ChatGPT and other frontier LLMs are the best that we can do. And, funnily enough, again, they're available for everyone.
So with ChatGPT today, obviously anyone who starts interacting that with the first time, it blows your mind. I mean, you're having a very human-like conversation with a machine, and the vast body of knowledge, like you say, it's memorized the entire internet. It's at its fingertips, and it can give you an essay or write a newsletter or just any type of. It's amazing. Within the first month or so, though, I began reading things through that lens, and I'd read some and say, that's ChatGPT. It's amazing how you can just tell the difference between still a human being and a computer. And my wife, we'll hop in bed at night, and I'll have my laptop up, and I'll be playing around. She goes, "What are you doing?" I go, "I'm arguing with ChatGPT." She says, "What?" I go, I'm testing its capabilities. And it's interesting how many times I can get it to admit that it's wrong. Oh, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Actually, this is correct. And even with my son, my son came with a math assignment he forgot. I said, well, let's see if ChatGPT can help us learn this faster. And it actually did some computations. I'm like, no, that's actually not right. And I put in the right answer, and it'd say, oh, I'm sorry. That's actually right. And I thought, well, how do you know? And I started arguing with him. Well, how did you know that this one's right instead of the other one being right that you previously, and we go down those rabbit holes. So tell me, I mean, I feel like I right now would not feel confident in making a trade, a large trade based on this, simply because I feel like it's not there yet. It's incredible quantum leap forward. What's your opinion on its use? Is it there? Is it not there? Give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, So first, I think let me give you and the audience a little tip on how to make ChatGPT productive. So the best thing that you can do is break the task into the smallest part possible. So what you want to do is like give ChatGPT, only the necessary information and break task into very, very small pieces. The way I like to think about it is like these models will fail with some probability. So like, it will give you a good answer like 95% of the time. But then if you have several tasks, like, by the 10th task, it's going to fail for sure. Like almost probabilistically, it's going to fail. Whereas if you just break each task into very, very small pieces, it will work so much better. So that's something that we do in research. Well, I do in research, for example. I always like call it every time like a new window and try to see like, okay, this session is kind of like expired, like it doesn't work anymore. Let's start new ones. So just like breaking tasks into very small pieces and fitting them those at a time works wonders. That's a small tip. Now, related, what about how do we feel about financial research, right? Like it's not obvious that it would give you the wrong answer. It's not obvious that it would give you the right answer either. The only thing left to do is to test its capabilities. So that's something I've done in my research. So what we did is we took like news headlines after ChatGPT knowledge cutoff, so that it wouldn't just be memorizing. So new news headlines. And then we would ask, okay, is this new headline going to predict a higher stock price or a lower stock price going forward?
Interesting.
And then we test statistically whether it was actually better than luck. And these problems are extremely hard. So, Renaissance technology may get like a 51% of the time correctly. It's just that over time gets accumulated and across different companies. And what we find in the research is that at least for predictive capabilities, it's actually very good. It's like state of the art. That's why I was commenting earlier that whatever method you were doing, you analyzing text analysis before, you should just substitute like using like ChatGPT. Now, is it easy to exploit these strategies? Like maybe not so, because one thing is predicting. So I always tell to my students that predicting is easy, but executing is hard. Because once you execute, you have like transaction costs, you have like, timing constraints, like you have like price fluctuations, you have like bid-ask spreads, etc. So the real world is much, much harder even than prediction. So predicting future, relatively easy. Executing on it, it's much, much harder because of the way markets incorporate information in the price so quickly.
I've heard that same critique that a lot of the models used eliminate some of those factors. And so it makes it a little more different when you bring those factors in. People have told me I'm going to be obsolete forever, and maybe they're right. I've been teaching for 30 years now, something in that neighborhood. And when the internet came out, they said, educators are going to be of no value. Everything you need is on the internet for free, blah, 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 blah. You said something that's really interesting. As we've talked about the use of AI, the ability to, I still feel I have an advantage because of my financial education, because there's something I would call, I don't know if there's a formal name for it. I would call it prompt skill. It's a new skill, and prompt skill. I don't know if that's a term or what the term would be coined as. Maybe I'm talking about something that doesn't exist. But to me, prompt skill is your ability to communicate with AI and ask the proper questions. And you just mentioned that the idea of breaking this down into smaller tasks that are very granular, maybe is the word, and limited, will get you a better result. And it's funny how the scope, I mean, what most people would like to do is go to ChatGPT and say, pick me a stock that will make me rich and give me the best one. With no, I mean, the culture of advice makes Wall Street rich because they can charge fees for people that don't know what they're doing. And the advice culture is a lazy culture. It's a culture that says, look, I don't want to mess with it. I don't want to learn anything. I want something for nothing. I want the Garden of Eden. I want, fruits and vegetables to be there, and no weeds and no work. And I just want to be fed. That something for nothing addiction in human beings is going to get people sucked into AI pretty quick. But give me your thoughts on financial education. Am I obsolete? Should people just say, no, I'm not going to worry about learning anything about money because now I have ChatGPT and it's going to solve all my problems? What's your comment on how it impacts financial education? Is it still worth learning something?
Of course, I think it's actually the opposite. So something in education that we cannot replace is the human factor, like just literally listening from another person, like telling us, like having a conversation. It's so much better. As you said before, all of the material that you need to know for anything in the world is online, right? In theory, everyone could learn quantum physics by themselves if they want to. Do people do that? No, because you really need to have like the environment to be willing to learn, to be willing to put some effort, and that's something that you cannot replace with this type of large language models. And as you were mentioning before, by the way, prompt engineering is the usual term for prompt skills. I
Prompt
think the
engineering.
people like to
Thank you.
call it prompt engineering. Yeah, it's very much in fashion these days. And yes, it's a super skill. As you said before, the hardest part of a problem is knowing what you want. Like, so, if you're able to convey what is exactly the problem into very small steps, then you can basically solve those small steps, right? So I was being a little bit tricky when saying like, oh, all you need to do is like break the task into the smallest steps possible, because that's 90% of the work, because then
Yeah.
anybody could do like each of the small steps. So absolutely, like we're completely not at that level. And even if models keep increasing in capabilities and are better able to do like 2 or 3 tasks at a time, we still are the ones that are deciding like what do we want. And in the context of finance, that means like, well, maybe I am risk averse this time, and then I need like more aggressive more conservative portfolio because I'm close to retirement. Or maybe like I'm young and in my I'm 20s, I have extra money, I'll just put it into a very risky bet and hope that it pays well in a long horizon. So I think the human factor and financial education are here to stay. Like I definitely do not see um, that decreasing.
I think it's even more important. Prompt engineering, that's going to be my new word, because when I don't know what prompt, I say, give me a prompt. What should I ask you? And then it gives me the prompt that I need. I says, well, can you make this prompt better? It's fun to play with. It really is. We live in an information age, which means we also live in a misinformation age. I think it's been so interesting to watch my children grow up in a time where there's deep fake. Even Jurassic Park, those look like real dinosaurs, that computer generated images. I'm like, that's a real Tyrannosaurus there. Are my kids going to be able to decipher reality from fantasy as they grow up? Because I did an AI voice, and I left a message on my mom's phone that wasn't my original voice. It was a machine generated voice. She didn't know. And that's scary when your own mother didn't know. And I showed her, and it freaked her out, because she goes, what if someone steals your voice and calls me and asks for a favor? I says, yeah. So what's interesting is my kids have become incredibly skeptical in a healthy way. My opinion is, because now they look at context. And if something seems off, they don't trust it. Even when it's genuine, they don't trust it, and they investigate further. My opinion is we're going to have to get more financially educated, smarter, to have greater discernment based on what people present as truth. Your thoughts on the world we're living? It's going to be an interesting world, right? I mean, I'm claiming that I'm speaking with Alejandro, but who knows? Maybe I couldn't get you to come on the show. Maybe you're just a computer generated image. It's like, Andy's got Alejandro on the show. Not. So can you prove to me you're not a deep fake?
I
What's
think
your
I make too many mistakes to be a computer generated image. So that's the way you can tell just by my words. Yes, no, I think you're right. It's crazy the world we live in. We are already like, honestly, like you cannot trust any video, you cannot trust any audio. So that's here to stay. But I feel technology, it's part of the problem, but it's going to be part of the solution. Like the same way, if you think about it, you cannot really trust a text message like saying like, hey, this is Alejandro. It's like, how do I know that? Like maybe it's a different phone, etc. I think we'll eventually find ways to certify that some material is
Yeah.
coming from the person or institution that it's say, and obviously maybe that will be one of the only uses of blockchain. By then, who knows? And I do think it's because of that it's increasingly important to become educated, to become skeptical as well, to do your own research, as they say. Yeah, I think it's fundamental for the world we live in. As of now, again, like whatever video you send to me, I don't know if it's real or not. Like we're already in that level.
Yeah, we are. The Predictive Edge, outsmart the market using generative AI and ChatGPT in financial forecasting. It's available on Amazon for pre-order now. Check it out. We're going to have a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to dive deeper into that book. We're going to talk more about how you could start learning about this today and apply it. We'll be back just after a brief commercial break.
So far, it's been great. I needed a source where I could really enrich my education through stocks. I didn't really have an avenue for it, and it's helped me a lot. The simplicity has really gotten me on the track to where I enjoy the learning as well as it's really solidifying in my mind. And like, they're not just trying to sell you something, they really care about the people that are in the course, and they really do care about you and your personal goals, and what you want to do is to help you and your family and whatever your goals are in life through that. So it's really been great.
Okay, we're back with Alejandro. Incredible to speak to a PhD that understands data mining and ChatGPT and the programming, the pricing, and all these types of things. Your book is The Predictive Edge, Outsmart the Market Using Generative AI and ChatGPT in Financial Forecasting. There was a book called The Random Walk Down Wall Street, and it says, look, the random walk theory says you're the defining characteristic of the markets might be their unpredictability, that you just should quit on that, tap out on that. The one thing you can count on is that it's unpredictable, and you should just broaden yourself, diversify. Buffett says diversification means you don't know what you're doing. Jim Simon is the classic example that says, no, you can beat the market. You can absolutely beat it, and we can do it with mathematics. They started with there's a story where they have a computer the size of a refrigerator being hoisted up and put in their office. It's got like 300 megabits of data, of RAM in that thing is all. It's just incredible. Now it's just bam, so much technology. So I tend to agree that AI will give someone, as you say, a predictive edge where you can beat the overall market with this stuff. So let's talk about a little bit about your book. It's coming out. You can pre-order it now. It's coming out in July 11th. What is a person going to learn in that, and how quickly do you think a person can take that information, begin to apply it into what they're doing?
Yeah, no, so I try to make it as beginner friendly and as advanced friendly as possible. So you really I start with a very basic section on financial markets, like very basic from the scratch. If you know nothing about financial markets, hopefully you learn a lot. I mean, it takes a lot of time to learn about financial markets, but I definitely have a section on the basics, on the fundamental strategies. Why are they sometimes good? Why are they sometimes bad? A lot of people like fundamental strategies, and I go into, well, what are those? What are the drawbacks? How can we address those drawbacks? And I also go into quantitative, more technical trade type strategies, again, benefits, drawbacks, etc. So I give a comprehensive view on that. And then the part that's probably going to be new for most of the audience in finance is I go deeply into artificial intelligence and ChatGPT. So both, nothing is super technical, but nothing is simplified. So you'll learn everything, but you don't have to do the math. Like I did that for you, basically.
I love that.
Yes, and so I basically explain, like, what is artificial intelligence, how the models like ChatGPT work, how can we make them work better, where do they fail sometimes, what can we do about failures. So everything you wanted to know about models, at least some subset, it's going to be there. And then I jump right away into first a couple of background research I was mentioning earlier about whether ChatGPT actually has any capabilities in the financial markets. And in this academic study, we show that yes, like unambiguously, it's good at predicting, better than chance. That doesn't mean that you're gonna pick the best stock and get rich. It just means that maybe instead of predicting with 51% probability, you can predict with 51.1% probability. But if you're sufficiently skilled at your execution and sufficiently transaction cost, potentially could be exploited. So I try to make the academic research amenable for everyone. Like, I try to phrase it nicely and to guide every step of the way. And then I jump onto other use cases. So, people like predicting financial markets, but that's not the only part of it. So, like, for example, a second big part is like risk management, right? So I go into potential uses of risk management. Yeah. I can go on and on, but let me know if you want me to.
No, well, what's exciting to me is, when I teach financial education, this is you got to have at least four things, and everything you do resides within four things. You want to have fundamentals, you want to understand technicals, you understand positioning for your cash flow, whatever that strategy might be, and then you have to have risk management. I agree. I think ChatGPT, when I look at risk, I really look at three things, and this might be a lesson for people. If I ask someone, picture this scenario, you're going to hop in your car, you're going to go down to the grocery store, you're going to buy a liter of milk, and return, high risk or low risk. And almost invariably, they say that's low risk. I says, no, it's high risk because if you take into consideration every bad thing that could happen between now and when you get to the grocery store and back, you're probably risking your life to get a gallon of milk. Is it worth it? They go, well, it's not worth my life. It says, what you have to understand is the probability. The reason we have this confidence in a scenario like that is its probability of success is really high, and the fruition of those risks is relatively low in probability. I think ChatGPT, I think AI is going to help us with the probability scenario as much as anything else and give us that edge to go from 51% to 52. Because if you can go 1%, as Buffett says, it's enormous. In compounding over time, a 1% increase is enormous when you plug it into compounding. So I've just enjoyed this conversation. Any final advice to our listeners? Let's say someone has been, listening to our podcast for a while and they've been, afraid to get in the paper account and even do risk-free stuff. They just haven't done anything yet. What would you tell someone in terms of a beginner, how AI might help them if they study it?
Yeah, well, I mean, if they're really a beginner, I would say like first you really need to master the fundamentals. You really need to master the basics before you get into AI. That's for sure. And then once you have a good understanding of finance, AI just make everything like so easy to implement. Like for example, not only can ChatGPT answer like questions, but you can ask it to write a software program trying to assess your risk management, and it will do it. Like if you upload like a spreadsheet with your transactions and ask it to analyze, it will do it. So it's a really high productivity tool. So it pays off to master it. That's one thing. The other tip I would give in general, both to beginners and more advanced traders, is that you normally want to trade where the really large players cannot play. So a lot of funds, for example, like Renaissance Technology or others, will stay away for stocks that are not like super liquid, stocks that are very volatile, just because it's not worth it for them. Because if they put a trade, they will move the price so much that they will destroy whatever predictability they have. So it's a common knowledge between academics that predictability tends to be concentrated in smaller stocks because the largest players will just not touch them. Like at some point I was advising with a hedge fund and they said like, you know what, if the stock has a liquidity less than 500 million per day, we cannot touch it. Like we just don't have, it wouldn't make sense for us financially. So learning exactly the market microstructure, like where are the players, where are the trades that can do, what's the risk in each part, like that's going to be fundamental. Like just digging really deep into the fundamentals.
Fantastic. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. Absolutely thrilling. Absolutely something that I certainly want to learn. I hope our listeners do too. Go to Amazon.com today and pre-order the Predictive Edge, outsmart the market using generative AI and ChatGPT in financial forecasting, and learn more about this. If you would hang on, Alejandro, after I finish, if I close the podcast, I'd like to take time to properly thank you for being here. Until next time, keep your risk management intact, practice on your paper, always be learning. I'm your host, Andy Tanner. This is where we do our very best to make investing simple. Go to yourinvestingclass.com for more goodies. We'll see you next time.